In my career as a filmmaker, I've tried a lot of different cameras. I started off with Canon, I've had Panasonics, I've had Sonys, I've tried Olympus, I've tried Fujifilm, but in my whole career, I have never ever filmed anything on a Nikon until recently. And so I had the great pleasure of testing out the Nikon Z6 for the very first time, and this is the first Nikon that I've ever filmed anything with, and it's the first Nikon that's really caught my eye for a few different reasons. A, it's the first, I feel like, Nikon camera that has decent video features to the point that it really made me want to try it. Up until now, I feel like Nikon hasn't really been known for their video side. Their photo side has always been really great, but their video side, kind of lackluster. And B is that they're doing something that pretty much nobody else is doing in this kind of mirrorless DSLR pro consumer, this kind of mid-range of cameras, and that's raw output. Okay, other than Blackmagic's doing raw, but nobody else, none of the traditional camera companies like Canon and all those companies, none of them are doing raw output. And to me, this is really interesting. I feel like for the longest time, camera companies have kind of played it safe. They haven't put all of the features or all of the power that they could into cameras. But now the playing field is a lot more level. There's a lot of competition, new companies coming out all the time, really pushing this market. Especially with the video side of things, the competition is really heating up. I feel like with the photo side, the specs are so good on pretty much every camera that it's more than the average person would ever need in their lifetime. But the video side is still really growing and developing really fast, and the video features can really make a camera stand out. And I feel like that's what Nikon's trying to do with the Z6, really trying to stand out from the market. And then the combination of the Z6 with the Ninja 5, the Atomos Ninja 5, you're gonna get crazy high quality with manageable file sizes, because we all know that raw video is like crazy big file sizes and it's really hard to deal with for the most part. Essentially, this could turn into something like a C200, which is a lot more expensive without all the bells and whistles, but still very similar quality coming out of this guy and then the C200. Now, we can't be sure about the quality because the raw output is not out yet. I was really hoping it would come out soon so I could test that out, because that to me is one of the biggest selling features of the Z6. So we're just gonna have to wait for that, but we can look at what is the Z6 like right now. What were my first impressions shooting with this camera, shooting with Nikon for the first time. And for this whole video, I basically used only this Nikon Z6 Filmmakers Kit. It comes with pretty much everything you need except for a Gorilla Pod. That's the only other thing I used. And if you want to get into filmmaking, the Z6 Filmmaker Kit is really great. It comes with basically everything you need to start out and more. Plus you end up saving yourself a good amount of money, so that's always a bonus. Okay, let's start off with the build quality, and I really like the body of the Z6. It feels really good. It's maybe not quite as nice as the EOS R. I feel like the body of the EOS R just feels really good in your hands, but all the button layouts and everything are really nice, and I do really like that they included a joystick still. That's one of the things that I do miss on the EOS R quite a bit. No flip LCD screen, we just get one of these tilt screens, which again, in my mind is a downside, but it is nice that you at least have the tilt so you can film lower or higher, sort of, if you need to. Only one card slot for all you sticklers for the 2 card slot. You're not gonna get that. And it's XQD instead of SD cards, which is kind of a downer in my opinion. For a few reasons. Usually everybody has SD cards, and then everybody has an SD card reader. Like a lot of computers even come with an SD card reader, but they do not come with an XQD card reader. So you're gonna need to buy another card reader, and you're gonna always have to make sure you're carrying this. Otherwise you're pretty much screwed, because you're not gonna be able to ask for your friend's MacBook Pro or iMac or something to offload your footage. But in the grand scheme, that's a fairly minor thing. Battery life, I found to be really great. I was reading that it can only do 300 photos with one battery, which is like very little. I didn't have any issues. We only had 2 batteries, and throughout the whole day of filming B-roll and vlogging and all that, I think we only went through like 1.5 batteries at most. So no issues with the battery life, which is something that I was a little bit scared of when I saw that 300 photos number. I don't know where that comes from even. Now, we only used the Nikon 24-70 f4 with stabilization. It was the only lens we had. Well, I kind of wanted to limit myself to just the filmmaker kit, but that's one of the big problems with the Z6 right now, is that there isn't a ton of options for lenses. Just like with the EOS R, there isn't a lot of lenses to choose from unless you're adapting, but then it gets bigger and it kind of defeats the purpose of having a mirrorless camera. I really want something in the wider range, like a 16-35, and then a little bit of a faster lens, an f2.8 or faster. f4 is kind of meh for me usually. The new 24-70 f2.8 is probably really great, but I didn't have that one for this review. And then let's take a look at really the most important thing about a camera, and that's the image. And this is probably the biggest thing that I was apprehensive about with Nikon and their video features. But I was really impressed. No crop, 4K, no crop, which is really great. I wish Canon would offer that a little bit more. Colors were great. I didn't notice any big issues with the colors. With a little bit of tweaks, I could always get them to a decent place. 120 frames per second, 1080, no crop again. I was actually surprised at how nice the 120 frames per second was. Again, I was kind of apprehensive. I thought it might be a little bit just not as nice quality, but I had no issues with it. It looked really nice, even blown up to a 4K timeline. And then you pair the Z6 with the Atomos Ninja 5 and you're getting 4K 10-bit N-Log out of this thing, and that's when things really started to shine. Yeah, you're not gonna really notice a difference, for example, in the video between the normal 4K and then the 10-bit 4K, but when you're working with it, when you're color grading, there's just so much more room. You could get a lot of detail back in the highlights or in the shadows, and just color grading overall, the color grade stuck to it really, really nicely. Again, you're not gonna really notice the difference when I upload a video, but working with it makes it much more enjoyable. And that's really half the battle, when it's nice to work with and you're not having to battle with the colors the whole time to get them to a good place. I honestly can't imagine how good the quality is gonna be when they're pushing out RAW out of this thing. There is a flat profile, which is gonna be enough for most people. So again, not the biggest thing for a lot of people, but I do wish I could get that extra dynamic range even in camera and not always having to use an external monitor recorder like the Atomos Ninja 5. And another really nice surprise was the IBIS in this camera. I find it to be a little bit better than Sony's IBIS, but not as crazy as something like a Panasonic or the Olympus cameras. It was kind of somewhere in between. You definitely notice the difference, especially when you're vlogging and you're just using a GorillaPod. There isn't that gross micro jitter the whole time, but you also didn't get the crazy wobble when you're at, let's say, 24mm, whereas with cameras like the Panasonic, you do get a little bit of that wobble on wide lenses when you have the IBIS on. So that's really, really great. I do wish that Canon cameras had IBIS. I don't know why they're not doing IBIS, but kudos to Nikon for putting IBIS, no crop 4K 120p. There's a lot of really great features to this camera. Now the autofocus wasn't bad, it wasn't the best either. I feel like Canon still has the best autofocus by a bit of a margin, but I didn't notice that it was any worse than the Sony's, definitely better than Panasonic. The Sony and Fujifilm, Nikon, they all seem to be kind of on the same level with their autofocus right now. There were times where it didn't focus properly. For example, I had to reshoot the intro talking in that trying Nikon for the first time video. I wasn't sure if the focus points were off a little bit or in a part where I wasn't anymore, or if it couldn't detect the face. I don't know exactly what was going on, but I did need to reshoot that, which is very, very rarely the case. I don't even remember a time where I've had to do that with a Canon. But again, I would say it's just as good as the Sony's and the Fujifilm, somewhere in that range. I feel like all the cameras have gotten to a pretty good level with their autofocus, to the point where you can use pretty much any camera's autofocus right now. but Canon is still just a tad bit better. I don't usually talk about audio, but I felt like I needed to mention there's a little bit of talk about the preamps not being as good on the Z6, and I did find, now I don't know if I was being affected by reading that stuff, but I did find that it was a little bit more harsh, not quite as full of a sound coming out of the Nikon Z6. So I do believe that the preamps aren't quite as good as some of the other cameras, but again, it's nothing crazy that you're gonna be like, oh, this is just horrible, you can't use this. But if you listen really carefully, you do notice kind of a difference, I think. Low light seems really great on this camera. I didn't really have any crazy situations where I needed to really push the ISO, but from what I've seen, the low light performance is really, really nice out of the Z6. And you're getting all of these features, no crop 4K, 10-bit N-Log coming externally, RAW very soon, decent autofocus, good colors for just under $2,000, whereas something like the Canon competitor, the EOS R, cost $2,300, and it doesn't have 120 frames per second, it doesn't have no crop 4K. So this is quite an interesting camera, and I think it's really underrated, probably for the same reasons that I was very apprehensive to even try this camera when it first came out. I was kind of like, it probably isn't that good. I'm not even gonna bother reviewing it. But now that I've tried it, I think Nikon is taking like massive strides in the video world, and I would not be surprised if their next couple cameras end up becoming really, really popular now that people are understanding like, okay, Nikon is also in the video game. And cameras like the EOS R, which is a little bit more expensive, are not gonna be putting out RAW. There's no way, despite the Twitter craziness mix up, they're not gonna be doing RAW with the EOS R. But the Nikon Z6, hopefully soon, RAW output. So how was the overall experience shooting with the Nikon Z6? Pretty positive, I would say. Again, I was very apprehensive, very scared of this camera, and I think it was way better than I expected. Yes, there are negatives, no log internally, the lack of lenses right now, that's a pretty big downside, XQD memory cards. But you're getting a lot of really great features like 4K, no crop, 120p, really nice external recording options. This is definitely an interesting camera, and if you haven't thought about trying the Nikon Z6, I highly recommend it. Again, that's the only way to really find out if a camera is good for you or not, is to try it out. And that's why I feel good that I've tested a Nikon, and now I feel like when the next Nikon comes out, I want to test it out because I want to see how much better they're pushing each of their cameras to be in the video area of things. And once they release a few more lenses like 16-35 f2.8, I highly recommend thinking about this for the YouTube filmmaking and even other stuff. It's gonna be a really versatile camera with things like RAW output. You're getting kind of like a mini C200 for $2,000. Well, I guess you gotta buy the Atomos Ninja 5 still, but for way less money than a C200, you're getting crazy high quality. So I could see this camera becoming a very popular camera even a little bit later once they do put out the RAW firmware update. Even though people didn't necessarily jump on the Nikon bandwagon right away from the beginning, I can see a lot of people jumping to Nikons as they roll out that RAW feature. Anyways, I'd say give it a try and don't rule it out just because of Nikon's past, their history with the video world. I feel like they just took a massive leap, and maybe some other camera companies should do the same. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.